Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Happy joining us for a little bit of Hebrew as we continue in the book of Daniel. And again, we're in chapter 10, trying to get to the end of this chapter, but there's just so many fascinating things going on here. And so if you take a look at your screen, see that we're on verse 15. Just a quick recap. Daniel had been given this vision, and he is just completely overwhelmed by it. And so we're trying to get a feel for, how is this affecting him? And the what he saw was obviously impossible to put into words, which is what I would expect a heavenly vision to be like, that we'd have no way of comparing it. And so we're going to see a lot of comparison words used here that are going to be kind of interesting as we go through, and I'll point that out. And so, verse 15 goes, and when he had spoken unto me according to these words, I set my face towards the ground and was dumb. Um, Now, did he fall down? Was he overcome? Is what I would imagine. He was just so overcome with um, the weight and the emotion of what's going on that his legs turned to jelly. He bent towards the ground, and it said he was dumb. We would use the term he was speechless. Now, we'll find out if we can. Was this a temporary role of being speechless? Was this something that was just his breath was taken away? We'll follow that as we go on. And then verse 16, it says, and behold, one like the similitude of the sons of men touched my lips. This is kind of interesting. Over on the right side, where my cursor is, it's Vehine Kidmut B'nai Adam, and it talks about it uses the Vehine or Hine, which is a word of behold, but it's in a very deep sense. When I see the word Hine in the Hebrew scriptures, it always causes me to look, because it's this behold. It's in a state of grandeur of this marvelous thing is going to be happening. And then he tries to describe what he saw. And Kidmut B'nai Adam, the similitude of the sons of men. And so it uses the word Adam for man, which I want to point that out as being kind of a key focus as we're going to look through here, because Adam in Hebrew, there's basically three words that are translated into men. One is Gaver, which would be a valiant type man, a warrior. Next would be Adam, which is someone, it always makes reference to the earth, because Adam was created from the earth, and his name means man, means Adam. It's an association with the earth, worldly things, natural things. And then you have another word for man called Ish, which is more of a frail type person without strength, or it can also be used someone who's renowned, has learning, is in a very uh, endearing type of way, that he's a more refined person. So we'll bring that out as we go through this. So this man touched his lips, and he opened his mouth and spoke. So it seems that he was not physically able to speak. This wasn't just a shock. This was a true physical impediment that needed divine intervention. And then, of course, at this time, he really recomposes himself. He says, I opened my mouth and I spoke, and I said unto him that stood before me. Just again, you don't hear any exclamation other than maybe, oh my Lord, which really is difficult to determine in the Hebrew. Um, Here it's Lenegdi Adonai is basically what he's saying. So they put "Oh my Lord" just because of the context of what's going on here, had to be just an incredibly overwhelming experience. And he's just, got his hands up in the air and going, "Oh my Lord, look what's happening." And all the verbiage that comes upon us when we're in a state of extreme emotional overload. And so he's saying this vision, and the reason for it brought me pains that come across me. I have no strength. I'm just wiped out because of this interaction I'm having here. And he's kind of complaining in a way. Kind of like, okay, you gave me this vision. You want to talk to me. You want to tell me what's going on, but now you just knock the wind out of my sails. I can't even stand. I can't talk. How am I supposed to hear? You know, is this really how this is supposed to work? So it's in a way got a little humor to it for me. And then in verse 17, he says, "For how can this servant of my Lord," again, here it's Im Adonai, uh, and again, it's not capitalized because it's not referencing God as we know him and sometimes refer to him as Adonai. How can the servant of my Lord talk with um, me, this my Lord? For as for me, straightway I'm just wiped out. No strength in me, no breath left in me. So again, poor Daniel. And you remember he's in his mid 80s, so he's not as strong as he used to be, and he's really getting overwhelmed by this. And you got to wonder, what was the purpose of this? You know, obviously God knows and knew that he would have been um, suffering this way, but yet he allowed him to go through it, and he allowed him to interact this way. And maybe it was just meant to give us an understanding of the difference between natural earth and supernatural realm that we only see small glimpses of. And this is a glimpse. This is a big glimpse of what we can see in a supernatural realm, that it is definitely not something we can ever hope to encounter in our own humanity. It definitely takes a divine intervention. We know that later on, Jesus talks about receiving glorified bodies like he received after he was resurrected. That obviously is in a different realm that may then allow us to actually participate in this spiritual realm. So let's see what the Jewish sages have to say. It talks about being the word toward, um, head bent down, eyes directed to the ground. So they don't feel that he was, flat out knocked out on the ground. He was just bent over, which is very much a part of their worship. When you if you ever sit in a Jewish synagogue and their worship, they will do a lot of bending over at the waist with the feet or looking down at the ground at your feet. It does say that he was dumb through fear. He could not utter words to express his thoughts and feelings. And then it looks at the word similitude, and we will unpack that a little bit later, having the resemblance or having the semblance of a human form, but in fact was an angel. His lips were touched, recovered the power of speech. Um, it's interesting that the sages use this term, "my pains have come upon me," and find that it is very similar to other places where a woman describes the pangs of childbirth. It's the same figure of speech. So you can imagine he was doubled over. His innards were hurting. Um, and the most terrible pain imagine anyone could explain. And that's why it was being used here. Interesting here, we talk about this is my Lord, uses the word Adonai, the Masoretic punctuation. The Masoretes were a group of um, Jewish sages that began in 300 of the Common Era AD and spent the next 300 years taking all the Hebrew scriptures and putting vowels on them, putting the cantillation marks on them, creating the sentence structure that we have today. In fact, they went through and revamped everything. And we don't have any other opportunity to see what it was like before they got a hold of it until the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Dead Sea Scrolls give us an insight into the Hebrew text before the Masoretic text was created. So that's why the Dead Sea Scrolls are very beneficial and instrumental in learning that. And then look at the word straightway, or back to this Masoretic text here. They talk about a little bit of the accent. And again, Daniel is in the presence of a divine being. And it says, neither was their breath. So I think we're going to for sake of time, go back to just this first verse here and take a look at this word for speechless. It is vene elamati, and unpacking that comes out to the root word alam, means to be dumb, to be put to silence. I think that was an interesting one. And it has, interesting too, is it's first used in Genesis 37, verse 7, in regards to binding sheaves together. And so if you can picture wrapping the sheaves of grain, wheat, whatever, with a rope to bind them together, and that became the basis for this word that's being used to describe what happened to Daniel. It wasn't just that he lost the ability to speak, it was that he was wrapped up, that he felt he was constricted and restrained in the ability to speak, that a power came over him and took away his ability to speak, similar to being like wrapped up uh, in a sheaf and bound together. So I thought that's kind of interesting. And then we talk about this being, and it uses the word kidmut b'nei adam, having the likeness. So let's unpack that word and see what that has to say. And this is in a fashion, a manner, similitude, a lot of different words to describe likeness. But we're going to find when we come back in our next lesson, Daniel used a different word to describe the vision or the appearance of this next being. And I'm wondering why he used two different words. And so this is just quite interesting. It defines a likeness, a form, a pattern, a model, or resemblance, and speaks both of a visible shape and something that's a concept. And so it's used to describe um, spiritual terms in ways that we as humans can grasp. It's basically taking and assigning something in a natural to relate to something in a spiritual so that we can understand it. And again, we have to understand that this probably will never give us a full description of what Daniel saw. He's saying that it had a form or and I think it's interesting that the book of Ezekiel uses this word a lot as I'm scrolling down, just noticing that. Um, Again, very fascinating because Ezekiel had some incredible visions here. But as Daniel is struggling with this, um, to understand and to figure out what this man was like. So having likeness, something I could see, it's a physical form, but was it more than a physical form? Again, we can only make some guesses here. So he touched him on the lips, he opened his mouth, and he spoke, saying, you know, El Ha'omed, he stood before me, Lenegdi, and stood before, who stood by him and word before me, Adonai, Mar'ah, and this is the word for vision, Nehefku, I have overwhelmed, Sirai, Alai, Velo Atzarti Koach, and my strength, the word Koach, he says, I've retained no more. And then again, this is just incredible what he is going through here. But he's calling him Lord Adonai, but it's thought of in somewhat of a master because this being has control over him, has the mastery over him at this time. And so Daniel is implying this is somewhat of a maybe a term of reverence and respect, but also truly in a term of I am being totally dominated by this entity, this person, this angelic being who is with me right now, someone I can't describe. I can only say that he looks like a man, but he surely can't be a man. He has power over me, so he's my Lord, and he's controlling me right now. And you know, Daniel's in a strait here because he's in a realm that he's never been in before. And we will have to stop here. I want to keep these in manageable bites of listening. We will not have class next week because of the Thanksgiving holiday. Wish you all a very blessed time of remembering what to be thankful for and to count our many blessings that we have for all that God has given us. And we will meet again on December 3rd. So until then, God bless you all and take care and see you then. Bye bye.